Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome back to our vegetable garden. Here we are at the end of July and boy is our garden going nuts. We are harvesting so many different things, and even though I'm a little stressed out by trying to keep up with everything, I have to remind myself that this is the whole reason we grow a vegetable garden. I've been getting a lot of questions lately from folks asking us how we preserve different types of crops that we harvest. And so I thought, that would be fun to do a series of videos on them as each crop is harvested. So today I thought what I would do is talk about preserving beans, zucchini, and berries. I've got all sorts of simple tips for you, and you don't need any special equipment for the types of things that I'm going to show you. So let's go indoors where it's nice and pleasant, and we'll get started. I grow pole beans every year because I find that they are more productive over a longer period of time than bush beans. And for the first time ever last year, I grew Vortex, and I am very happy with them. I chose this variety because they're more heat tolerant. And as our summers get hotter every year, I knew that was an attribute I needed to look for. And I've found that no matter how long the pods are, when I pick them, they are still tender and flavorful. So let me show you what I do with the pole beans. The first thing that I do is snap off the ends of each bean and then snap them into bite-sized pieces. Now, of course, just for dinner, I could steam these and they would make a great side dish to accompany our main course. Now, to preserve these beans for future meals, especially during the colder months of the year, I like to do something called blanching and freezing. It's a super easy method, and I'm going to show you how to do that next. But before we proceed, I want to mention how important food safety is when it comes to preservation. If you are new to food preservation and you've got beans and you think, hey, I'm just going to can them, you absolutely have to use the pressure canner method. You cannot can beans using the water bath method. You can get botulism when things are not properly preserved. And there is a fantastic free website that you can consult with that's called the National Center for Home Food Preservation. And it has all kinds of information on the different ways you can preserve different types of produce, how to do it, and what you need to do as far as food safety goes. So fortunately, I'm doing blanching and freezing with the beans, and I have to tell you, I would rather eat the beans that have been prepared this way rather than canned beans. I just don't think canned beans are all that tasty, to be honest. Step number one is to bring a kettle of water to a full rolling boil. And then add your snapped beans. Now, if you have quite a lot of beans, you'll probably have to do it in batches. Once the water has returned to a full boil, set a timer for 3 minutes. At the end of 3 minutes, you want to very carefully pour your beans into a colander. Now, if you have more than one batch of beans to freeze, I'd recommend using a strainer and scooping them out of the boiling water so you don't waste any of that water. Then you want to immediately plunge the beans into cold water. Once the beans feel cool to the touch, take the colander out of the water, let it drain a little bit, and then what I like to do is take a jelly roll pan and a clean kitchen towel and put the beans on top of it and get them as dry as I can so there isn't a lot of water when I freeze them. Water is one of the enemies of freezing because it can affect the quality of what you've frozen. Now, sometimes people will say, oh, you don't need to blanch them. And it's true, you can just pop them in bags and put them in the freezer. But it does make a difference in the quality. So I wanted to share with you what the National Center for Home Food Preservation has to say about blanching. Blanching, or scalding vegetables in boiling water or steam for a short time, is a must for all vegetables to be frozen. It stops enzyme actions which can cause loss of flavor, color, and texture. It also cleanses the surface of dirt and organisms, brightens the color, and helps retard loss of vitamins. It also wilts or softens vegetables and makes them easier to pack. So you can see blanching is something that is a good idea to do, and I feel it makes a big difference in the end result. The last steps are to label freezer bags and put your beans into them, and then pop them into the freezer. Next up is zucchini. The variety that I've been growing for the last few years is called Cocozelle, and it is awesome. I really like it. It is incredibly productive, just like most zucchinis, and you really have to check the plants every day because it seems like there's always new ripe ones when you thought you had caught up with them. So the first thing, of course, that I like to do with them is to steam them for a side dish with dinner. Also, for immediate use, I like to make either zucchini patties or pizza boats. And both of these are easy to find on the web, but just email me if you want a link to the recipes. I also enjoy making zucchini bread, and there are lots of tasty variations on that recipe. Now, for future use, what I like to do is shred and freeze the zucchini. Here's how I do that. You can use a grater, but if you have a food processor or a grater attachment for your mixer, that is way faster. Since zucchini patties and zucchini bread recipes both call for 2 cups of grated zucchini, that is the size that I freeze in freezer bags. And to do the proportions, you can either scoop 2 cups of the grated zucchini into a freezer bag, or you can use a little scale, weigh how much 2 cups of zucchini is, and fill the bags that way. When you want to use them, you can pull them out of the freezer, thaw them, and I recommend putting them into a colander with a plate or some other container underneath, and that's to catch all the moisture from the process of them thawing back out again. I also tend to use a paper towel to dry them off even a little bit more before I add them into the recipe. But this works really great, and it's a perfect way to preserve zucchini so you can enjoy it later. And this is what the bags of grated zucchini look like after they've frozen. Now, what about berries? Well, in addition to eating them fresh and adding them to things like pancakes and waffles, I also freeze them. And the way I freeze them depends upon the type of berry. We grow a lot of blueberries, and I have found that the fruits aren't super juicy, and so they freeze easily just by putting them into a freezer bag and putting them into the freezer. This is a bag that I froze a few weeks ago, and you can see the berries are not sticking to one another, so it's really easy to shake out some for making muffins, adding to oatmeal, and so on. When it comes to freezing juicier types of berries, such as blackberries, which are what you're looking at here, boysenberries, or raspberries, there is one extra step that's definitely worth your time so that it's easy to grab just a handful of berries or a certain amount from the freezer for a recipe. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. Now you'll notice I have these in a jelly roll type of a pan. And I put them in here in a single layer preferably with a little bit of space around them. I put them down into the freezer until they are frozen hard like a marble, and that usually takes a couple of hours. Then I'll take this out of the freezer, put it into the freezer bag, and what happens is that these berries don't stick to each other. So they're all kind of loose in the bag. You can just open the bag, and let's say you're going to make a cobbler or something. You just get the quantity you need, thaw them out, put the remaining ones back in the freezer, and that's it. It's so easy. Here's another example of using this method for preserving fruits. A friend of ours who has an orchard recently gave us some apricots, and all I did was I sliced them in half, I put them onto a cookie sheet, got them completely frozen, and then I put them all into a bag into the freezer. So you can see that these are all loose, so I can take out what I need for a specific dessert, and you can see how hard they are. Okay, that's all for now. I hope you found it helpful. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Happy harvesting!